Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Maybe you watched a video I put out earlier today about Canadian knife laws and some frustration. This is sort of my chance to talk about something positive and make a video that I enjoy rather than make one that I felt like I just needed to share, okay? So, I've got the VR71 for you today. This is obviously from Brous Blades, and it is also the G10 version of this. It's the same kind of thing that Jason did earlier. I guess he did it last year with the Silent Soldier, where he took a knife that was already popular and offered it in a more budget-friendly version with G10 instead of some of the more high-end materials. So really, really cool. And because I already had the Silent Soldier, because I already had the Division, I kind of knew how this would be constructed and what I was getting into other than just the shape and size. And so I was not hesitant at all to pick this up, and I've been really, really pleased with it. I will do a review or a comparison video down the road between this and the Division. I think they're pretty similar. But for now, I want to focus on this one, and I purposely didn't bring the Division to compare it. So I'll save that for down the road, okay? Size and weight on this is 8 3/4 inches overall, so 8 3/4 inches. The blade on this is 3 7/8. Now, a lot of websites say 4 inches. I tried multiple ways to measure it. I couldn't get it all the way up to 4 inches. I pretty consistently got 3 7/8. Okay, so whatever. I don't know. It's very close to 4 inches. I got also 4 7/8 for the handle. So that gives us our 8 3/4 overall. The cutting edge on this, I don't always share this now, but I will, because one of the things that's really cool about this is the blade to handle ratio. You've got a knife that is 8 3/4 inches with nearly a full 4-inch blade. With that, that's really, really cool. And it's really neat to see just how much blade is able to fit into this handle. It's a kind of an achievement that he's gotten all of this length and all of this cutting edge into an 8 3/4 inch knife. Okay, so that brings us to one last, I guess I should say the handle in case you missed it a second ago, at 4 7/8. The weight on this is 6.1 ounces, so a little heavy, but for what you're getting, you know, look at just the sheer amount of G10 on this. You've got a big thick piece of D2 steel, and so 6 ounces is not out of line at all for this. Also, quite a large backspacer, which is going to contribute something to that weight. You could probably pare it down a little by going with standoffs here, but the backspacer is jimped, which does provide quite a bit of grip. Okay, so by the way, when we're talking about weight, I will just tell you these stainless steel liners are very heavily milled out to cut back some weight, and so yeah, 6.1 ounces is not something we ought to complain about. At least I don't think so. All right, let's do a couple of quick comparisons. What have I got here? I've got a couple things that I think have a similar, you know, philosophy of use. I would say this is a great. Obviously, it's a design that's meant to be a very quite a slicer. It puts me in mind of other sort of Persian in styled blades. You can kind of pick up that sort of S shape in the handle and blade, and so. A Recon 1 is a very common knife that would sort of fit the same category, same size. It is lighter, which is pretty impressive, but that's how this knife compares to a Recon 1. Okay, and I would say philosophy of use would be fairly similar on these. Large EDC, maybe combat. I don't know if I would want to do much bushcrafting with this. Now with the T4, yes. I don't have my T4 anymore, but it was specifically designed to do some outdoor type tasks. The Recon 1 I'd be a little more confident with. Here's another knife, again, similar philosophy of use on this, 0 tolerance 0200. This is, as you know, and I've said many times, one of my favorite 0 tolerance knives, and that's how it compares to the VR71. Very similar in size, and even the blade to handle ratio and that stuff is quite good. Now, of course, you guys know, if you're familiar with knives, that the 0200 weighs more than an ounce more than this knife. One last comparison for you, and this is more because of the flipping action. The VR71 is a great flipper, and I'll talk about that more under deployment, but the ZT0392 is the best flipping knife that I own, okay? By the way, I'm thinking of getting rid of this. If someone has an XM18 that would like to trade straight up for the 0392, I'd probably be open to doing that. Great knife, and I just love it. I'm just a little scared to carry it because of its collectability. All right, I'd like a knife that I could kind of have as more of a hard use knife. Anyway, back to the VR71, which is the main point of our discussion today. Want to move on to the blade next, and so let me kind of move aside a little bit and zoom this in. Come on, there we go. All right, so there you go. You can see already really clearly that this is a very deep hollow grind on this drop point blade. I'm going to say this, I've said it over and over and over again, you're going to keep hearing me say it. I love hollow grinds because of what it allows you to do, okay? You have this huge, thick, beefy piece of D2 steel, which is awesome. But the challenge that provides is, how are you going to get this thing to slice? It's just too much material. Well, the way you do that is by putting a hollow grind on it. So you take a big thick piece of steel and you put a hollow grind on it, and then it slices super well. And for me, a knife is primarily a cutting tool, so I want it to slice, and certainly this one slices like crazy. Now, you can see that this blade is all belly, which means this is the kind of motion that it's kind of designed to carry out. Obviously, it works really well for all kinds of EDC tasks, but sort of as a combat knife, if you're a firefighter, or police officer or soldier or something like that, and you need firearm backup, certainly this is going to do the job. Of course, the other thing is, most of the cutting tasks we do are slicing tasks. So a knife that's a great slicer also really works well as an EDC knife, and this one certainly fits that role extremely well. It is D2 steel, and D2 is only semi-stainless. Now I'm going to tell you, I think I had this question a few days ago. I've not had any problems with any of my D2 blades. I don't have, I have, 6, and I've gotten rid of some. I've had at least 10, and I've never had a problem with rust. And now, we don't live near an ocean or anything like that. It's not a super high humidity environment, but certainly in the summer we get very hot, very humid weather. And even in the winter, our winters tend to be damp cold rather than dry cold. Again, meaning there is good humidity here, but it doesn't give me any kind of rusting issues with my D2 blades. All right, now, having pointed that out, I will also point out that D2 is a very much loved steel by me because of the fact that it performs so well. So it's a very tough, very durable steel, and for me, my experience has been that D2 takes a stupidly sharp edge, just crazy sharp, and it holds that edge better than a lot of similar steels. A lot of nicer knives, maybe they're S35 or S30V or whatever else. Lots of steels hold a good edge, but not many are as easy to get that edge on as D2, okay? So I find that D2 takes an edge really readily, and it holds it like crazy, which is just exactly what you're looking for, okay? So, great blade on this, amazing performance. Because of that very deep hollow grind, it slices like crazy, and so it's going to do all of your, everything from cutting rope and cardboard to food prep and everything in between, okay? So, great blade on the VR71. What about lockup and deployment? Let me back up just a little to demonstrate that, okay? So, it is primarily a flipper knife. It does, of course, have the opening in the blade, so you can deploy it with your finger like that, which is, that's helpful to me because there are times and places where, I get my knife out and I don't really want to do this, okay? I just want to, kind of gently and discreetly get my knife out and make a cut and put it away without having to worry about it. And so having that thumb hole in the blade does allow for that to work out nicely. The other thing is, of course, the hole fits well, it cuts back on the weight, and it really goes with the overall design of the knife. So I'm a fan of having those two options. I've had a couple knives, and I've had knives on here for review where, for some reason they feel like every possible opening option needs to be on a knife. It's going to have a flipper and a wave feature and a thumb stud, and you know, who knows how many other ways we can get it open. So I don't like that. It kind of overcomplicates things. I like when you get, you know, sure, it's not bad to have that second option. So now I've got flipper and thumb deployment. That's perfect, okay? I don't need 2 or 3 more ways to open this knife, okay? So that's really good. It does flip really, really well. Some have said it flips better than the Division, and I don't know that it flips better, but the blade is much heavier. So when you do get the blade moving, it tends to hit lockup with a little more confidence, with a little more oomph than the Division, which has a lighter, shorter blade on it. All right, let me compare the deployment between this knife and this knife. Okay, the ZT is a little snappier. Okay, the D10's a little stiffer, and I will say the pivot is a bit smoother. Okay, you are getting a fantastic knife with this, and so this has sort of been my new standard for a flipping knife. It just is amazing. The VR71 is not quite there, but it's very good. Okay, certainly it's much better than a lot of competitors. If I bring in the 0200, it flips, but it takes a little thought and a little effort. This is much more natural, and because of the size of that blade and because of the geometry on the flipper, it works really, really well. Okay, it is a liner lock knife, and those liners are fairly thick, but they're not quite as hefty as they were on the T4. Okay, so they're thick. Certainly, they're thick for stainless steel liners, but I've seen some that are even heavier duty than this. Now, is this more than enough? Absolutely. I will kind of let you see, I don't know, if I move that knife around a little like that, you may be able to see the milling in those liners that do cut down on the weight. Okay, so lockup and deployment is good. It's nice and early, it's solid, and deployment, of course, is smooth and fast on that ball bearing pivot. Now, again, ball bearing pivot does place some limits on the knife for me. Great EDC knife, but I wouldn't want to put this in any kind of hard use environment or any high dust, high dirt, maybe a construction site or a warehouse. You're going to get dirt and crap in there, and it's going to affect how well that knife functions. Yes, I know you could probably carry some WD-40 around or something like that to spray it out when you needed, and sure, go ahead and do that. But the fact, you know, that need in itself, I think, indicates a bit of a weak point in ball bearing pivot knives. Now let's back out here, and I will talk about the handle and then my overall impressions. The handle on this is very, very comfortable. I tend to like knives that have this sort of that S shape to them, where your hand kind of flows into the blade. Certainly this is a knife, when you have it in hand, you feel like it's meant for slicing. It kind of calls out to be made into those circular type motions. It is very comfortable in standard grip. Here's one thing that I think is a real win. This is a large knife, and you've got a lot of blade sticking out there, so you've got the option to choke up and use that little choil, and that really makes a difference. And in fact, it even has a bit of a cutout for your thumb there, so you can kind of lay your thumb right up there, and now you've got all the control and precision that you could ever want. Just works really, really well, and I think that's a real win. I know it's kind of a typical Spyderco idea. Jason Brous carries it off a little differently, but really, really effective as, you know, for those tight, detailed EDC tasks. All right. Of course, there is a deep choil, so you're not going to ride up on that blade if you're doing any kind of stabbing motion. And the jimping is fairly good. Okay. Now, I don't know. The direction of the jimping, it tends to catch a little more pulling than pushing, but either way, it's reasonably aggressive. The other place that it's got jimping is all along the back spacer here, so in a reverse grip, it does lock you in pretty well. And in a normal grip, that jimping cuts nicely into the palm of your hand, so you get a really, really positive grip on this knife. So very comfortable. Now I will say this, it is only a single position pocket clip. Okay, it's similar to the T4. more so than the Division or the Silent Soldier, where they kind of slot into the back here. This is on the side. It's I don't know, it's a fairly thin clip, but you know, it's designed just right so that, you know, I've carried this a lot. I've bent it out to fit it in really thick, you know, heavy cargo pants and not had any issue. You know, it's a spring clip, but it's one that's really well done, okay? And you can see that it is kind of milled from one piece of stainless steel, which is pretty cool. It also has Jason Brous Blades here on it, so there is a bit of bannering going on here. Nice lanyard hole, and Jason doesn't often do a lanyard hole. A lot of his knives have some other method of achieving that, but this one has a nice lanyard hole. I'm not a lanyard guy, so it doesn't mean much to me, but if you're out there watching this and you go, boy, I just have to put a lanyard with beads on every knife that I own, you do have that option. All right. Overall, I think this is just a really cool blade. Certainly, I think, you know, if you're one of those guys, and I think lots of guys are out there doing this, certainly this is what started me into getting interested in knives. I just wanted to carry one really cool, really good knife. And in my research, I realized I wanted a number of really good, really cool knives. But you know, would this suit most people's purposes as an EDC knife? Yes, it would. It's probably a little large, depending on what context you're carrying it in. You could go ahead and pair it with something like, you know, a Spyderco Native 5 or, you know, Flash 2 or any number of other blades. You could pair it with a smaller knife if you wanted, or a small fixed blade. I know I've been talking about that a fair bit recently. If you're in a situation where a big knife is not going to be an issue, like I'm, you know, most of the time in my day, I can open and use a knife however, wherever, whenever I want. The people that I'm around don't care, and the situations that I'm in are not, you know, situations where anyone's going to bat an eyelash at having a knife, even a knife that's this large. The other thing is, even though it's large, because of that option to choke up, you can get a lot of fine work done. So it acts like a small knife or a large knife, which is really handy. All right. So there you go, guys. That's my overall. Oh, one last thing I want to say. This is back to Brous Blades in general. You know, you can pick one of these up for a couple $100 and you have essentially a mid-tech knife. You know, a knife that is in a class that normally you don't come near for under $400. So it's really cool that Jason is offering these blades that those of us who are fans, but maybe we don't want to spend $400, $500, $600, or maybe we can't, we can still at a lower price point get a really well-made, really awesome knife that by his own admission, he calls them semi-custom, meaning, you know, he does have some interaction with every blade that goes out, which is really, really cool. All right, there you go. So that's my take on the G10 VR71. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll talk to you soon.